You ever watch someone you're supposed to trust, someone paid to guide you, slowly poison an entire room? It's like standing in a classroom that smells of chalk and quiet dread, watching a fire smolder under a polished smile. I didn't just witness it, I lived it. And one day, I became the match that burned the lie to the ground. I was 17, and my school felt like a forgotten hallway, 8 cramped rooms humming with flickering fluorescent lights. Most teachers fought for us. They stayed late, skipped lunches, patched our wounds with kindness. But then there was him, let's call him Mr. Harlan, a man who walked in like he owned the air we breathed. At first, he pretended to teach math. Within weeks, lessons dissolved into endless reruns of TV shows while he lounged in the principal's office, laughing like the world was his private joke. When he did speak, his words cut like rusted wire. He called the teen mothers in our school lost causes, sneered at kids with learning struggles, and labeled those of us battling depression as psych ward dropouts. Every insult landed like a slap you couldn't dodge. I kept quiet until the night he called one of my classmates Downsy. While the room went silent, something inside me snapped. I went home, fists trembling, and poured every ounce of rage into a single plan. If the system wouldn't stop him, I would. The next morning, I carried an empty notebook like a weapon between classes. I whispered to classmates, "Write down what you've seen. Every cruel word. Every time he vanished. Every time he made you feel small." By the end of the week, that notebook was heavy with 30 stories, handwritten scars on paper. But I wasn't finished. I recorded his outbursts, the way he'd mock a kid for asking a question, the way he'd stroll out for 20 minutes while we sat unsupervised. I caught him laughing about us into his phone, like we were punchlines in his private comedy. Every moment became evidence when I showed my mom, a quiet warrior who happened to sit on the school board. Her eyes turned to steel. "Write it all," she said. So I did. 3 brutal pages of my own testimony, sealed with the fury of every kid he tried to break. Weeks passed. I sat through his class like a spy, every insult sharpening my focus. Then one morning, he simply didn't show up. A substitute stood at the door, shuffling papers. The air buzzed with rumors. 2 days later, the principal called me in. He'd read the statements, he'd watched the recordings, and for once an adult looked at me and said, "You were right." By the next bell, Mr. Harlan was gone, escorted out of the building he'd poisoned. You'd think that was the end. But life has a way of circling back. 2 years later, I sat on a committee to hire a new principal. Among the applicants, the vice principal who'd once laughed with Harlan while we suffered. She walked in, smiling, bragging about how she cared for students. I waited until the room grew still and asked, "If a good student was falsely accused of something serious, would you crush them with punishment? Or listen first?" She said, all sweetness, "Oh, I'd listen." I'd never hurt a child without proof. That's when I slid a copy of her signature across the table, the same signature from the suspension she'd given me years earlier, when I'd been framed for stealing a jacket I never touched. Her face drained of color. She didn't get the job. Standing there, I felt something I'd never known in those dim classrooms. Power, not revenge for revenge's sake, but the power of truth, documented, undeniable. If you're watching this, maybe you've got your own Mr. Harlan. Maybe someone's trying to silence you with authority and a fake smile. Here's what I learned: paper remembers, video remembers. And when you carry the weight of proof, the loudest bully in the room suddenly has nowhere to hide. So tell me, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts below. And if you've got a story of standing up to someone who thought they were untouchable, I want to hear it, because sometimes the quiet kid with the notebook is the one who brings the whole house down.